Medical coders, I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about two worlds, training and real world. Training ultimately results in, hopefully a certification. Okay, but I need to warn you. I need to caution you. Certification is just the starting block. It is not the finish line. Getting a certification is kind of a minimum standard. Okay. Have you ever taken a pre-employment assessment and despite a certification, not passed the pre-employment certification? Or once you have a job, you are held to all kinds of standards, including regulatory compliance, payer compliance, accuracy, productivity, the expectation of a certain level of knowledge, mindset, including communication with superiors and other coworkers, timeliness, etc. So, certification is a standard, but again, it's the starting blocks. It is not the finish line. And so, I want to spend a few minutes and review a chart with you that is about as basic a chart that you can get. Okay, and more than 70% of certified coders cannot code this chart correctly. So let's take a look. And that's the chart there, but I have broken it into its component parts. So it's going to be 4 slides. So we'll go through this so that you can see it better. Okay. And so here is the chief complaint. The patient is here to review test results. And a patient is here to test for test results reviewed and discussed with her. Vitamin D WNL, which is within normal limits, but in the lower limits of normality, patient is feeling good. Okay. So, folks, the patient is here to review test results that reflected a normal result. Okay. The patient has had breast cancer and a mastectomy. Okay. And pregnancy information, etc. So let's get to the exam or the objective portion. Okay, and we have some vital signs and the physical exam NA. There was no exam performed. Okay, and likely because the patient came in to review test results. And that is all the narrative discusses is reviewed normal test results, right? So now we get down to the assessment. Okay, and we have there's 19 diagnosis codes here. 19 diagnosis codes, and many you'll see it says chronic disease, which we'll discuss here in a moment. Okay. But there are 19 diagnosis codes, and then we finish up with a prescription. A prescription that was apparently called into a pharmacy, but we're going to discuss that in a moment too. Okay. So, how would you code this chart? How would you code all codes? Procedure, diagnosis. If you understand HCCs, are there any HCCs here? And every coder should understand HCCs because every coder that assigns codes is an HCC coder, whether you identify with it or not. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So here's a suggestion. Hit pause for a moment and code this as you would without influence and just jot down your codes. But hit pause here so that you don't see, before you have coded this as you would in the real world, pause the video, go back and look at the sections if you need to, but come up with your own coding. Okay, and then we will resume. So let's talk about the procedure code, the office visit code. Here are the number and complexity of problems addressed options, and folks, we only have one self-limited or minor problem, if that. I mean, there's not even a problem. The results were normal. The patient came in to review test results. We can't get any higher than that. Okay. Amount and complexity of data reviewed. Okay, and there's two categories that either out of the two categories, one of the two must be met. Okay. And for category 1, tests and documents requires any combination of 2. Okay. Well, we have a review of results of 1 test. So we don't meet that one, and we don't meet assessment requiring an independent historian. So there's going to be no, it's going to be the very lowest level for amount and complexity of data reviewed. And then the table of risk. Okay, minimal risk or morbidity from additional diagnostic testing or treatment. Low risk of morbidity from additional diagnosis, or testing or treatment. Prescription drug management. Okay. Decision regarding minor surgery, decision regarding elective surgery, diagnosis or treatment. So that is moderate, and then high would be drug therapy requiring intensive monitoring, etc. So these are the options for risk. Okay. And we're going to talk about this in a moment, but many coders go to, moderate prescription drug management. Okay, we're going to talk about this in a minute. And even if that was selected, we still wouldn't get to what the record reflects being coded as. And if you coded it as a level 3, I don't know how you could possibly get there. Okay, so we have one self-limited or minor problem, as I mentioned. Amount and complexity of data reviewed doesn't make it. And prescription drug management, folks. The medication is an NSAID. It's over the counter. Okay, and this is directly from that particular medication's website. And so you might say, well, yeah, but the doctor wrote a prescription for it. Okay, it doesn't require a prescription, so it's not prescription drug management. Okay, and there is a link there for an article where providers discuss reasons they might write a prescription for an over-the-counter drug, and the reasons are among other things financial. Mindset of the patient, where the patient might be more compliant to take it if they walk out of but it does not meet the medical necessity requirement for prescription drug management. Okay, so this is where you have to be a little knowledgeable beyond just the black and white of what you see and making an assumption. Okay, so now I want to talk. That was talking about the procedure code. We'll wrap all that up at the end here. But one of the biggest things that I see is certified medical coders are extremely anemic, largely on official guidelines for coding and reporting for diagnosis coding. Okay, and I hear things like, well, I'm a pro-fee coder. I code for doctors. We're worried about the reimbursement, and the procedure code, so we can get paid correctly. Okay, folks, let's take a look at this. These guidelines are a set of rules. Okay, these are rules that have been developed to accompany and complement the official conventions and instructions provided with ICD-10 itself. Okay. Adherence to these guidelines when assigning ICD-10 CM diagnosis codes is required. So we got rules, we've got required under HIPAA. Okay, that's federal law, folks. It's required under federal law. So, and this is on page 1 of over 100 pages of guidelines. Okay, this is on page 1. So if you didn't get past page 1 knowing this, what else are you missing? So And it applies to all healthcare settings. I've heard people say, "Oh, well, that's for inpatient." Folks, please don't be deceived. Please don't be naive. Okay. A joint effort between the healthcare provider and the coder is essential to achieve complete and accurate documentation, code assignment, and reporting of diagnoses and procedures. Okay. Complete and accurate documentation, code assignment, and reporting. Okay. It would be inappropriate to select a specific code that is not supported by the medical record documentation. Okay, so remember we saw 19 diagnosis codes? It would be inappropriate to select a specific code that is not supported by the medical record documentation. Okay, and that is extremely important. Okay, so we have these 19 diagnosis codes. These of course I have pulled out these, I'm not reading you over 100 pages of guidelines. I've selected the appropriate and relevant portions. Code to the highest level of specificity when supported by the medical record documentation. Let me read that again. Code to the highest level of specificity when supported by the medical record documentation. Okay, so folks, there was no support for inflammatory polyneuropathy. There was no support for stricture of artery. Okay, one of the ones that I really makes me cringe here is the fourth one down. Age-related osteoporosis without current pathological fracture. Okay, now folks, vitamin D is not the only criteria that can make or break the diagnosis of osteoporosis. However, there is nothing else. There's no DEXA scan, nothing else to indicate that there is osteoporosis. There's no mention of the patient having osteoporosis. Okay, yet the provider assigns a diagnosis for a condition that there is, if there's anything in the record, it supports that the condition does not exist. Okay, and as medical coders, we don't draw medical conclusions in any case. So then here down to the bottom, I have in the yellow, AHA Coding Clinic for ICD-10, fourth quarter 2015 issue, official guidance provider for ICD-10 CM. It is not appropriate for providers to list the code number or select a code number from a list of codes in place of a written diagnostic statement. And if you are not familiar with AHA Coding Clinic, you should be, because it is official and it is an extension of the guidelines. Okay, and I will reference it on the next slide. What if the doctor, selects the wrong row? He's going to click on one code and accidentally clicks the row above or below it. Okay, or their finger slips, or and they select a wrong code. There would be no narrative diagnosis to check it against. So to have a diagnosis code in an assessment, there has to be clinical support in the record. Okay, and so in this particular case, we have no clinical support other than the personal history of malignant neoplasm of breast, which is a informational code in this case. It's not a diagnosis. It's a indication of personal history. Okay, and it's not it does not impact this encounter in the slightest. So, as I mentioned, if you have ever seen this notation, AHA 2018 2Q12, okay, or 2015 3Q 37 to 39, AHA, American Hospital Association, you may see, depends on the publisher, you may see AHA CC, Coding Clinic. Each publisher references it, may reference it slightly different, but the 2018 is the year. Coding Clinic is produced 4 times a year quarterly. So this was the second quarter of 2018, page 12. Okay, now in this case, there's 3 coding clinics that impact this diagnosis code. 2018, second quarter, page 12, 2015, third quarter, page 37 to 39, and 2012, fourth quarter, page 93. Okay, just a quick little additional statement on AHA, okay, Coding Clinic, is that you cannot possibly be coding correctly if you are not going and referencing these citations to know what they say. Okay, and do not look at something and say 2012. That's 11 years old. That's Coding Clinic guidance lives in perpetuity unless and until it is formally terminated or superseded by additional guidance. Okay, so you could possibly see a Coding Clinic reference from 1998. It would still apply if it has not been superseded. Okay, so this is one part of diagnosis coding that many coders do not have mastery of. Okay, now we're looking at fracture of lumbar, spine, and pelvis. So since we're on fractures, let's take another look at another item here. In the guidelines, there are chapter-specific coding guidelines. Okay, and in the tabular list, it does not have anything that says, oh, there's a chapter-specific coding guideline, better go look at it. These exist in the official guidelines of coding and reporting, and it is the coder's responsibility to know that they exist and know to reference them and when to reference them, okay? And so in fractures, we have chapter 13 and chapter 19, diseases of the musculoskeletal system. You'll see acute versus traumatic, chronic or recurrent musculoskeletal conditions, coding of pathologic fractures. In chapter 19, coding of traumatic fractures. There is information in the chapter-specific coding guidelines that you must be vigilant of and applying in your coding process. Otherwise, you cannot possibly be assured that you are coding correctly, okay? And there is nothing in the tabular list that alerts you, oh, go look. That is your responsibility as a certified coder. You should know this, okay? And a lot of training programs out there do not effectively instill this in coders. Okay, so let's look at that record that we were looking at. Remember, there were 19 diagnosis codes. Okay, let's look at the record had been coded as a 99213, which it does not meet that level. It can only possibly meet the level of 99212, and it struggles to do that. As far as diagnosis codes, there are only 4 diagnosis codes that can be applied to this visit, and only one of them was in the code assignment by the physician, and that is the Z85.3 history of breast cancer. The reason for the visit is Z00.00 routine examination without abnormal findings. Okay, and that was not in any of the diagnosis codes assigned. We touched on a number of those diagnosis codes that simply are not applicable. They're not supported in the record. That is not compliant. Okay, another code, and these other codes are not again, these are informational supplemental codes here. Acquired absence of the right breast and long-term use of aspirin. Okay, long-term use of NSAIDs. Okay, but these are informational. They're not. They do not elevate the medical decision making or anything as far as the procedure or the level of service. Okay. and they don't impact. They are supplemental and informational, as a description of Z codes allows for their use and does suggest their use. Okay, but 19 diagnosis codes, and I want to talk about. Remember the chronic conditions. Okay. Um, I see if you do not know what HCCs are, hierarchical condition categories, or risk adjustment, okay? If you do not know what that is, okay, you have a blind spot in your knowledge. If you assign codes, if you are assigning codes, and as I pointed out earlier, this is federal law, required by federal law, the adherence to guidelines, okay? And so if you are adhering to the guidelines, if you are coding appropriately, then you should be in compliance with HCCs, okay? But you should know, you should understand the why behind what you're doing. But if not, if you are not masterful in your diagnosis coding, you're going to run into compliance issues with HCCs, okay? And the OIG is look, the Medicare program, and by the way, risk adjustment applies to all three major payer categories: Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial. Okay, so do not start drilling down and say, oh well, it's not a Medicare patient. you don't code to a payer category. You code according to guidelines. Okay. The fact is that the Medicare program and government programs have always been, vigilant and observant of fraud, waste, and abuse, and have always fought fraud, waste, and abuse. But in today's economic world, um, and statistics reflect absolutely, rampant waste in government programs. The OIG is really, really, really focused on fighting fraud, waste, and abuse. And you might be saying, well, I'll take my chances on getting audited. Do you know that if you are coding for a Medicare patient, your claims data is going to CMS? You may be submitting it to a commercial payer through the commercial Medicare program. Every single one of those claims gets forwarded to CMS so that a risk score for a patient can be calculated, and it can't be calculated without that information. And there are certain circumstances, folks, where bad coding can be identified with the press of a button. Okay, coding the acute CVA or an acute MI in an outpatient setting, which is a frequent circumstance. A CVA is not diagnosed, treated in a doctor's office. Okay, it is an inpatient only diagnosis code. Okay, so folks, just understand your data is arriving to a place where it's going to be scrutinized. Okay, so just HCC is really important to understand. So here's my message. Don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Okay, and the labor market is extremely competitive and increasingly so. This is accelerating with healthcare organizations facing tighter and tighter economic constraints. Health systems and hospitals are running insolvent, and I saw a statistic the other day of 500 are at risk of closing. Okay, so this comes down to a broader impact than you keying a code into a encounter. it has a ripple effect, a downrange effect, and it is being scrutinized. So don't practice till you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Know the information, know your craft, know your profession, okay? So that you are, not just relying on the fact that you're certified, you are relying on the fact that you are knowledgeable, competent, proficient, and master your specialty. Okay. And so if this is helpful, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button, like and share, and share this information. Okay. We have A+ rating, 5-star reviews, and you can see some links in the description, including to some additional training. And I want to, on the subject of YouTube, I want to point out, okay, one of the ways that that coders are ill prepared in this world, okay, in this industry, is there's this notion that somehow price equals quality or success, etc. Okay. If you have gone for, if you've taken training and paid thousands of dollars for it, okay, thousands of dollars for courses, often without an instructor, okay, with limited time before you have to start paying more for extensions, etc., okay. If you go back to that course provider and see if they have a YouTube channel, look at their YouTube channel and see if you are getting any information such as this, out there for free, no charge, valuable, insightful information. You may find that their YouTube channel is chock full of marketing lures to take, to influence you to take their courses, and they show you nothing about what you're getting, okay? And their YouTube, many of these providers, these training providers, YouTube channels are a big zero when it comes to actually providing you insight as to what their training is, what their content is, how effective it is. And if you do check their reviews, you'll likely find that they are slightly above 1-star reviews, okay, for those $1,000 courses. So dollar signs do not equal quality, okay? And dismissing a program because it is inexpensive may be a very very costly move. So do your homework, check public reviews. Better Business Bureau website is a great place to check. But I hope this information is helpful to you, and I hope maybe you've learned a little bit about where you might be able to improve. And again, check the link in the description for some additional information.